What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome in. It is officially the first NBA waiver wire show of the Ethos sports season, of the NBA sports season. We are here. Eric is just going to join us in a couple minutes here. Apologize for getting started a few minutes late. Obviously, first one of the season, had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we're here and we're in this and we're ready to do it. Your questions are welcome because obviously we all got a lot of them. I myself got a lot of questions, but it's all about the Lakers right now. It's not about who's going to be added to my fantasy roster. I'm feeling pretty good about those. But you guys your draft might be upside down. Who knows what's going on with you guys already? So feel free to ping in the questions as soon as you got them. We're going to have Eric with us. It's going to be wonderful just to be back with you guys. And I know last year we took a little bit of a sojourn from the live format with the video. This year we're bringing it back based on feedback. And, I got the pseudo studio set up behind me now with the whiteboard, the brick. It all looks good. I look like Schefter, but better in my opinion. Anyway, let's get going, man. All right. Guys like Keegan Murray, guys like Jaden Ivey, they might be league winners if you drafted them late. I got a cat that's coming onto my lap. I got Eric. Eric is here. Eric!
Hey, Ethan.
What's
Long
up,
time, buddy.
How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing great, man. And I'm just happy to be doing this again. I think it's been a couple of seasons since I've been on a show with you, and I miss you, buddy. I miss you. I just miss talking about fantasy basketball with you and with anyone in particular, actually. But you, because you challenge me. You give my ideas and thoughts. So a run for their money, so to speak. It's I'm glad to be back. How are you?
Good, man. It's been a wild couple of years, but I think that's sort of the standard for everybody during this pandemic period of time. So not here to complain, only here to celebrate life. Happy to be back. Just before you came on and we went live like maybe 20 seconds before you joined us, I was saying the same thing. We took a little bit of a break from the video last season based on viewer feedback and just our own sort of internal metric. Like, what, it's time to bring this back. So we're stoked to be able to bring that back for our audience. And really, Eric, I mean, obviously it's been a handful of days basically in this NBA season, right? No shortage of storylines already. We don't have to start with my Lakers. We don't even have to talk about my Lakers, especially after what just happened today. Okay. But
considering it's a waiver wire show, I don't think we can talk about the Lakers. So
Troy Brown Jr. might be a conversation, but not right now.
All right. Fine. Let's be generous. Lonnie Walker. All right. Lonnie Walker. I'll give you that.
If you're looking for Laker fantasy basketball value outside of AD and LeBron, things have already gone wrong for you. I'm going to be honest. But that said, all right, Lonnie Walker is a play right now, maybe Troy Brown Jr. later. But Eric, I know you're a man who usually has about 42 and a half fantasy teams. So my first question is, how many teams you got this year? And my second question is, when you were drafting, did you have any sort of trends or sort of patterns that you followed, and have some of those worked out well for you so far? Have they burned you? How active have you had to be on the waiver wire already, right? I mean, I know it's only, 2 or 3 games for most players, but people are making moves. We're already seeing some waiver wire gems start to emerge. Where are you at in the landscape right now?
All right. That's a lot. That's a lot. All right. Let's go one by one. Yes, right. I follow the trend. Mm-hmm. I'm in roughly 12 leagues. And
roughly 12, so 12 and a half.
Only 12. I've been cutting down. Okay. I've been cutting down.
Okay.
It's also hard to focus on too many leagues. I've learned that lesson the hard way. But I've gotten into some higher buy-in leagues, and I'm really taking preparation for this season very seriously. And because of that preparation, I've come in with a game plan. And that game plan coming into the draft was mostly going for small ball strategies without sacrificing field goal. So basically, I've been targeting guards who shoot the ball at a reasonably good clip. We're talking about the DeJounte Murrays, the Tyrese Maxeys. I'm loaded up with shares of those guys. And I've actually gone all in on a few rookies, one rookie in particular, especially after a strong summer league performance and a great preseason. And I'm talking about Keegan Murray of the Sacramento Kings. I am in love.
You know how to make the boss man happy. Brew's going to love that pick from you.
Well, I've had I was all in on Murray, and let's put it this way: I drafted him as early as July.
Okay. Wow.
All
Okay. So
right.
you so
I
you
mean,
love
I
you loved him. You loved him from the start and then some.
yeah. So I'm not a. It's not just a bandwagon thing. I I did some research. I'm in a couple of dynasty leagues, and
Mhm,
I have shares of Murray in both,
mhm,
and that's making me happy. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So far, my teams are averaging field goal in the 46 to 48, a high 46 to 48 range, which is not bad for a small ball strategy. So I'm
sure.
doing well. You know, guys like Maxi, for example, had a rocky, bumpy start with James Harden's hot start.
Mhm,
But I'm okay. 1 week. It's been a week, and like you said, there's been a lot of action on the wire. A lot of names that are worth talking about. But on the other side of that coin, I'd also like to share to our listeners and viewers is if you've done your research and we have, and if you got our draft guide or if you're a Fantasy Pass subscriber, you know we've done our research. And after such a small sample size, it's way too early to panic. I mean, buddies of mine are trash talking me in group chats about my investment in Tyrese Maxey, me reaching for him quite early. But, you know, I know the guy is a hard worker. He's a fundamentally sound, combo guard. And it was what, 2 games? There's really no reason to panic, especially on, big ticket guys. Uh, that said, all right, there are some guys who've, really fallen off quickly. Um, just talking about end of bench guys who I've seen dropped. Patrick Williams of the
mhm,
Bulls, for example. He was, um, a late round flyer for a lot of guys, thinking that, he's potentially a two-way player who will give you a 1-1-1. He's done none of that. His
mhm.
minutes have gone down. He's not really, made a splash. Um, and I'm not too happy with what's been going on with the Bulls. They've outside of DeMar DeRozan and Zach Levine and Nick Vucevic, there really isn't a lot to be excited about on that team. Even Alex Caruso, your former Laker, who a lot of players, who a lot of GMs invested in as a steal specialist, has not been producing the numbers that a lot have been expecting.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen him dropped on the wire, and this is a waiver wire show. So let's talk about our common buddy Alex for a second. That was a panic move. He started off slow, but I think he's still gonna get minutes on this Bulls team. They need his defense, right? I think he's dealing with a minor injury right now, so that's neither here nor there in terms of the big picture of the whole season. But I think the guy's gonna get minutes, and those numbers, those steals, they're gonna come back. So is he somebody? Actually, I consider him somebody I'd put on a watch list right away if he was, I might not pick him up right away, but
Mhm.
he's somebody I'd watch out for those steals and dimes.
Okay, I like it. I mean, look, this is sort of the overreaction and underreaction season, right? Because it's only been a handful of days. People are either riding it out or saying, "Oh, I'm already done," right? After 1 or 2 games in an 82 game slate. Don't try to have that panic move right away, right? If you look at a situation like I think there's a difference between Patrick Williams and Alex Caruso, right? Alex Caruso is playing a position where he's got AO and he's got Lonzo Ball who can't even walk. So I feel pretty okay that he's going to be okay, right? And I guess walking is sort of important if you want to play basketball. Patrick Williams is more of an interesting one to me because you got Javonte Green right behind him, right? And a lot of people expected Green to actually start outright over Williams. So if you drafted Williams expecting this to be sort of a sophomore breakout or something like that, you might have to push that by the wayside. But I'm still willing to give him a little bit of time just to see. But that Bulls magic that we saw last year, where everyone was like, "Oh man, I think this Bulls team might actually be good." It feels like there's something off early with this team, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some additional changes along the way, especially if Zach LaVine's knee starts to act up as it did in the first couple, which kept him out of action. We got some questions right away, so we're gonna come back to my
Shoot.
waiver wire, sort of gem of the season already, late round pick, but that's called a tease, so we give you reason to watch. All right, let's get started. from Roclaren, and if I'm pronouncing that wrong, please correct me. Okay, I might want to make sure I get everybody's usernames, preferred names correct. How high do you think Josh Hart will rank this season after such a strong start in Portland? 9 category roto, 12 team league. All right, so Erik, Josh Hart, his first game of the season, he got out with a bang. 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, only 2 turnovers, and 8 of 11 from the field. I mean, outside of him not hitting a 3, he did pretty much everything you brought him onto your team to do, right? The last 2 games have been a little bit of a different story, right? That second game, he had 10 points, 7 rebounds, a couple of steals, a 3, only shot 33% from the field. Wasn't that impressive, right? I mean, useful numbers, but not really what we're looking for. Today against the Lakers in a 2-point win, only 9 points, but he had 16 rebounds. 16 rebounds for Josh Hart.
For guard.
5 assists and 2 steals, and he hit a 3. He only took 5 shots from the field, making 3 of them. Look, if you drafted Josh Hart, you didn't draft him to score. You drafted him to do all the rest of the stuff. And to me, this is a really good example of a player. You know, we talk a lot about stocks, right? Those steals, those blocks, that what everybody's sort of chasing on the waiver wire that seems to be hard to find. Josh Hart is a good example of a player who's going to just contribute across the board. He's going to chip in a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there. It's going to be hard for Josh Hart to hurt you. My opinion, the most impressive stat of the season so far for Josh Hart are his minutes. 38.5 minutes, 41 minutes, 36.5 minutes today. Josh Hart is going to play in Portland. They need him, and he needs Portland. So I like Josh Hart as a top 100 guy for the season. Where are you at on it?
Yeah, top 100 is actually the floor that I see Josh Hart as. And especially considering that the question is about a roto team. Yeah. And I think that's the perfect format to use a guy like Hart. As you said, he does a little bit of everything, even a lot of rebounds coming out of that guard position. So if the guy who's asking the question is worried about Hart, I wouldn't be worried. Towards the end of the last season, when he joined the Blazers, his 3-point shot was unlocked, and he started knocking down those threes like there was no tomorrow. And although he hasn't been hitting a lot just yet, Damian Lillard has kind of sucked all that usage up big time, but it's going to come. And like you said, we're not drafting Josh Hart, to score like Damian Lillard. We drafted Josh Hart because we know that he's, a white collar guy, a blue collar guy, actually, who does the dirty work and does all those little things that help a team win. And I'm on. I think that he's even good enough, and assuming he can stay healthy, to flirt with top 75 value.
Yeah, pretty good. I'm willing to push in with you, because here's the thing. Last year when he got to Portland, it was such a good showing, but it was obviously something that we weren't expecting, but we knew wasn't going to be sustainable, right? Because Damian Lillard was not in the picture. He was still dealing with that ab injury. And last year was kind of a wasted year for Lillard. The Blazers were kind of figuring out what was going to be for the long term, what was going to be for the short term. In 13 regular season games, going back to last year when Josh Hart first got to Portland, he averaged 25 and 4. With a steal and 2.5 threes a game on 50% shooting. Now, you take Josh Hart's name away from that and you tell me those numbers, that's a guy you're reaching for, not just trying to find as a bargain. I mean, you might be reaching for that guy because those numbers are so useful, especially on the wing. People have this sort of weird idea that wing depth is always there. This particular season, it's not in the fantasy landscape. It actually goes off a cliff really quickly. So I like Josh Hart. I like what he brings to the table. I like his minute situation. I like that he's not going to get a big challenge for his minutes. It looks like Portland's pretty locked in with this group right now. So I actually really like Josh Hart. If you're able to steal him in the late round, I think you're going to get a great return on investment. So if you're worried, like Erik said, don't be. Erik, are you worried about this guy, Domantas Sabonis? First 2 games in Sacramento have been not what I would call spicy, or if you want to say they were spicy for the wrong reasons. What's your take on Mr. Sabonis here? I mean, he's literally playing right now, and at halftime he's got 8 points and 4 rebounds in 8 minutes. So not what we're looking for. Some early foul trouble. This is a guy who a lot of people drafted early. I mean, as high as the 2nd round, if not the 3rd round. I don't know that I'm worried about Sabonis, but he's definitely was not a guy who I was like, ooh, I really need him on my team this year.
Yeah. Speaking of strategy, you might be surprised that considering I went for small ball, I don't have any. I have 0 Sabonis shares. for the same reason that you just mentioned. A lot of people reached for Sabonis at
Yeah.
those spots, and I was priced out because I don't see him as a top 25 guy or a top 30 guy.
Yeah.
I see him more as somebody who's going to struggle to reach top 60, actually.
Mm. Wow.
Um, and I think that the the early expectations of that gelling with De'Aaron Fox
Hmm.
was a bit overblown, to be honest. And I think that uh, they're not on the same page. And as you can see from the last, the first few Kings games, it's De'Aaron Fox who's playing out of his mind, and it's and and Sabonis has taken a back seat. It's not a 1-2 punch. Sabonis is looking more like a jab with Fox throwing that haymaker, right?
I
Um,
like that.
and I think that Sabonis might take some time, but he'll get there because uh, he's not really that much of a go-to scorer, even though he did play somewhat of a role like that back in Indiana. He's
Hmm.
better as a facilitating big man,
Okay.
passing from the low post. But then Fox is somebody who's on the fast break, running down the floor. And if that's it all depends on the pace of the game and the
Mm.
tempo that the Kings are playing at, right? If they're creating defensive stops and running down the floor, it's Fox who's going to finish off. Sabonis is better in a slower, more controlled half court setup where he can, muscle down his man down low, then kick out with a pass to the outside. Not too different from what Nikola Jokic does with the Nuggets. So unless you know, it's a matter of a new coach also. If you think about it,
Mhm.
Sabonis is not maybe not yet adjusted to Mike Brown, and who is a defensive minded coach, and Sabonis is not exactly known for his defense. To Sabonis's credit, he is defending a bit better, even though he is not um, doing it, getting it done on offense. So should I be worried? Maybe a little, but I think when you're talking about a guy that size with that base level of skill, I
Mhm.
think that there's a certain floor you should be able to expect. Probably not the floor a lot of GMs were thinking when they drafted him, because I think he
Sure.
was really overdrafted too
Mhm.
early. So yeah, um, I think expectations have to be tempered, but worry probably not so much.
I think that's a good way to phrase it. So here's kind of where I'm at on Sabonis. So if you go back to last season, right, and you look at when he first got to Sacramento and played with the Kings, his numbers are pretty aligned to what he was doing with the Pacers. I mean, literally, right? Before the trade, he was averaging with the Pacers, he was averaging 18.9 points. Then in Sacramento, he went on to average 18.9 points. Okay, same exact number. His rebounds actually went up very slightly from 12.1 to 12.3. The assists went up slightly from 5.0 to 5.8, right? Turnovers actually went up a little bit too, but that was a result of usage. And everything else kind of stayed the same, except his three-point shooting went off a cliff. Not that he was ever a prolific or super efficient three-point shooter, but his three-point shooting, he was clocking in at 23.5%, which is not any kind of three-point shooter or any kind of shooter at all. Okay. And he wasn't taking a lot of shots. He was taking 13 and a half shots a game. So it's not like this is a guy who needs 20 shots a night. You look at his first couple of games this year, he's averaging a couple less shots right now, but it's, we'll chalk that up to the first couple of games. But he's not scoring efficiently. He's doing nothing from behind the 3-point line. He's not scoring enough to really be a contributor there. He's not getting enough rebounds, and only 7 a game right now to be a contributor there. He's nice for some out of position assists right now. I'm looking at his steals and blocks numbers, and I'm already thinking stocks in my head, right? So he's got 6 a game right now. And then he's coming in with a steal and a half and a block and a half. And you wonder how sustainable that is, because he's never averaged anything close to a block in his career, or if that's just some weird sort of fluke to start the season. But Eric, I agree with you. I don't see Sabonis as this game-changing league winner, where I don't think at the end of the line we're going to see a lot of fantasy teams hoisting championships that have Domantas Sabonis. Sure, some will be there, but I don't think he's going to be this key piece that propels you there. I feel like he's going to be more, ancillary than really a key cog in the machine. So in one league where I was in, and in the draft, I had first overall pick. So in this particular draft, I went Jokic at the 1. But then, you got to wait a lifetime for that to come back to you, right? On that 2-3 turn. Right before it comes back to me, Sabonis is taken off the board. And I was just dancing, not because I thought I was going to have to take him, but that meant it left Kawhi and Cade Cunningham for me at the turn, which I couldn't have been happier about. Okay. So that was me personally. And Kawhi is a different conversation as well. But Sabonis is not a guy who I think is even a buy low candidate. If you want to buy low on him for the purpose of, roster balance, or for the purpose of, I think he's going to be a little bit better, sure, go for it if you're not giving up a ton. But in terms of, I think he's going to be this league winner, let me get him while he's down right now, I don't see it there. And I think that's a really good segue. That's what we call a segue, boys and girls, into the next topic, which is, a lot of questions. Dan, shout out to you, Dan. Appreciate you. If you don't know Dan Besbris, I don't know how you got on this stream, because everybody knows Dan. All right. And the question that he's gotten a lot lately is, how do you buy low on a player if they're not playing that poorly, right? When it's not obvious. And, can we speak to a little bit about that and what it means to buy a player in a trade? So for me, you can have a guy who's not playing necessarily poorly or great, but maybe he's got a really enticing schedule ahead, right? And remember that a lot of times in the fantasy landscape, we think that trades have to be absolute. And what I mean by that is that, like, Eric, I trade you, Josh Hart, and you trade me, I don't know, Jeremy Grant. I know that's not a trade we're going to make, okay? And I know they're on the same team, but let's just go with it, right? But I might be acquiring Jeremy Grant because I like what his next 5 to 10 games look like, and then I'm going to flip him after that, right? You have to look at it more in that mindset too. A lot of times in fantasy, I feel like we trade for a guy, and then no matter what, we sink or swim with him. Like, it's okay. You can cut your losses, or you can sell for a profit. Just like, for me, I'm a big trading card guy. So every time I draft a fantasy team, whether it's baseball, basketball, whatever, it tends to be that I start collecting those guys too. So it's sort of a mirror image, right? And it's the same. I mean, same thing as stocks, same thing as trading cards, same thing as anything. You always want to turn a better return on investment than what your initial acquisition cost is, right? And sometimes that means just keeping the asset, and sometimes that means moving on. But I think that this is a good sort of way to paint the illustration. That is, look, if you have a guy who you think is going to be not just usable, but actually we'll use the word profitable, for lack of a better one right now, in the next 8 to 10 games. So you're talking, maybe week and a half, 2 weeks, or even 2.5 weeks as we get deeper into the season. And you can flip that player later in a 2-for-1 for that real guy who's going to change the ceiling of your team, right? Or the trajectory of how your team is performing. Then I think it makes sense. And that's when you have to really look at what the matchups were, who they're going against in individual contests, right? People who are sometimes very skilled in DFS will take that next level analysis. Like, so if I'm playing, a poor defensive team, that's sort of surface level analysis. Okay, they're ranked, 25th in the NBA in defense. Okay, but how's their wing defense? How's their defense at the rim? How's their defense on the perimeter? And if you have guys who are dependent upon those facets of their game, their performance may be different, even if they're facing a defense that in totality performs one type of way. So that's kind of what I like to look at, and really thinking about those opportunities to not necessarily just buy low when a player isn't performing well, but when he's not maximizing his potential based on individual matchup, timing of the season, whatever it may be. And then sometimes you just got to take a chance, right? I mean, we're all so reliant on information that this critical thinking component has sort of gone by the wayside for a lot of people. It's okay to be higher on a guy who the consensus is not. And like, it's okay to be lower than the consensus, right? We talked about Sabonis just a few minutes ago. So that's kind of my general approach on this. Where are you at with this, Eric?
All right, let's address the how. All right. When you're doing trades in let's say a public league, or even if it's in a league with your friends, more often than not, a lot of people will look at current ranks, which is effectively current market value. And as you said, if a player is not playing that poorly, that means he's either playing okay or playing well. But that in your mind, you think he's still not yet living up to his potential. Let's say, for the sake of numbers, you project him to be a top 25 guy. He's currently performing at a top 40 level, which is still pretty darn good. And I wouldn't consider it really a buy low, unless he was, sucking and being like a top 100 guy. Then that's a buy low. But based on the example of the question given, let's say he's playing like a top 40 guy. So if that's, simply offer a top 40 guy in exchange, the guy will probably not hesitate. Cannot argue with the sense of the offer that you're making. But the point is here because of the situation that the player you're targeting isn't playing poorly. Um, and since we're using financial terms here, your return on your investment is not going to be as great as if you gave a much lesser guy. But if you really want him and want him now, before he starts living up to that top 25 level that you foresee, then offer that top 40 guy. Give what's of equal current market value because you're projecting a better end of season value. Because remember, we have to think bigger picture, not just look at 1, 2, 3 games, think 82 games and what he's going to do. And that's how I play it.
I think that's great advice too. Like nobody likes to be lowballed in trades either. And so this idea that, just to finish on this point, I don't want all your bench players for my one stud. I don't want your 3 last guys at the end of your bench for the guy that you think is going to make your team better. Nobody likes those trades. So if you're that GM in fantasy who's like, I'll give you these 3 crap bag sandwiches for your guy who I think is going to be a lot better, don't be. If you think it's the value, aim there, right? It's like when people make an offer. If you got something listed for $100 and somebody offers you 40, you laugh them off the phone. But if somebody offers you 80, 85, you're probably a lot more inclined to take it if it starts with a strong offer. So I think that's good advice, Erik. Thank you for sharing that perspective. All right, Rand, it's your time to shine. What's the highest ranked player you would give up for Kawhi in a 9-category Roto League? Top 40, top 60, top 80? Erik, I brought up Kawhi before. I said we were going to come back. I didn't realize it would be this soon. What's your take?
Oh, all right. It's a Roto League. So I'm going to have to align my perspective here because most of the time when I think about fantasy, I'm in head-to-head mode. All right. Because in head-to-head, I'm not touching Kawhi with a 10-foot pole because of those missed games. Roto is a different story altogether now. If you can time those games that he's going to play and substitute a lesser guy in those games that he's going to sit, he's actually pretty good. If you max out, let's say, the 50 plus games that he's expected to play this season. That said, I think top 40 is a fair floor. I might offer that. If I could get away with top 60, why not? All right. I'd offer that for Kawhi. Because it's Roto, I think top 40 is still fair. I think on a per game basis, Kawhi is going to get there. The guy worked out really hard. The guy's a lot bigger than he was, before he went down with that injury. And I think that the Clippers are just playing it safe right now, letting him come off the bench, managing those minutes. And it's understandable. ACL injuries are pretty serious, and they're difficult to come back from. But Kawhi's a monster when it comes to fantasy. He was a top 5 per game, value player just before he went down with this injury. So can he get back to top 5? Nah, maybe not this season. Right? I'm not holding my breath for that. But can he deliver maybe top 25, top 30 per game? I think that's doable. And I think right now, given the slow start and given his coming off the bench, I don't like using the term low ball because, I try starting with a lower opener, and when it comes to these trade offers that people talk about, I don't think it's necessarily offensive to start off low and try to look at it as a negotiation of sorts. If your league is that way, okay, it's a back and forth. It's haggling. All right, you don't open with your best offer. Ideally, if it's that kind of league, but some people just offer with their best offer, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. But if you're all friendly and everything, and you have set up a group chat, Facebook Messenger or whatever, or a Viber group or whatever it is, however it is your league is communicating with each other, talk. Don't just rely on the platform system and send out an offer and, hey, can I have this guy for this guy? What do you think? No. Sometimes their GMs have specific needs in mind. And if you address those specific needs, you might win out on overall value in the end. especially in head-to-head, when builds and strategies make teams lean certain ways over the other. So yeah, I'm pretty positive on Kawhi. I'm just not, you know, optimistic that he'll play a lot of games. But I think the per game numbers will get there.
I like it. Okay, I'm gonna play a little game with you on this because I'm curious where your brain is at now. Because Rand followed up and he said he's only playing 20 minutes a game right now. We don't know how long that'll last. Look, Kawhi himself said it's going to be a process to ramp him up. I'd be surprised if he weren't at least 25 as we get 10 games in, and 28 and 30. He's not going to play much more than 32, 33 minutes a night, I think, even at his peak. Okay, I mean, this is a guy who's had not only injury issues, but consistently it's the same concern. It's that quad, it's the knee, it's the leg. This isn't Anthony Davis where it's the finger, the shoulder, the back, the knee, the tooth, right? All these weird little things adding up. This is something that Kawhi has had to manage for several years now. And it doesn't seem like everybody or anybody really knows the extent or what could happen. There's a lot of caution around it, right? And the Clippers will be careful because they are deep, man. The Clippers are good. They are deep. They are deep on the wing. They have that luxury. So I just told you guys I drafted Kawhi at the turn of my draft in a 12-team league. I drafted him 24th overall, last pick of the second round. Okay, so I felt strong about Kawhi. I felt strong. Okay, mostly because of what I think he will do as the season progresses, not at the onset of it. Okay, so the game I want to play is these are some players that I'm going to just randomly name, and I'm not going to tell you where they were drafted. Okay, but I'm going to randomly name them off. These are players drafted just after Kawhi, and you tell me, speaking about what you would trade out for him, yes or no. One word answer from you, Eric. Would you trade these players for Kawhi Leonard? You ready?
Shoot.
All right. Zion Williamson, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Rudy Gobert.
Yes.
If you are willing to trade Rudy Gobert for Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
Okay. DeMar DeRozan.
Nah.
Okay.
No.
Evan Mobley.
No.
Okay. Zach LaVine.
Yes. Zach LaVine's knee scares me as much as Kawhi's ACL.
Chris Paul.
Ooh. I was about to say no, but I'm right now a maybe because even Chris Paul's floundering early in the season. I think age has finally caught up with him, but he's still got enough left in the tank. And if I had Chris Paul, I'm talking too long, so no.
Pascal Siakam.
Hell no.
And last one, Domantas Sabonis.
Oh yeah, please take him. Give me Kawhi for my Sabonis.
Okay, so in my league, Sabonis was drafted ahead of Kawhi. The rest of those guys were drafted within 10 picks of Kawhi just afterward. So it was fairly split, right? So if you're looking at this as I need to trade one of those types of guys to get Kawhi, well, then you're looking at more or less equal value. There's always going to be some guys who slip unexpectedly, who fall unexpectedly, who might be pegged in the wrong holes, right? Based on the users in the draft, based on how the draft position scarcity goes, all those sorts of things. But it seems like he's trending right where he should be, even with the only one game so far. And yes, it was not a world's most spectacular game, and I know there's a lot of caution. But if you're of the mindset, right, that you're already sort of trying to hedge your bets with Kawhi before he's even on your team, my best advice to you is target someone else because you're going to give yourself a headache all season long with this. Okay, so that's the best Kawhi breakdown I think we could give you. I really like this question because this is a player who is forever and always off the radar until he's immediately on it. And that's Isaiah Hartenstein. All right, grabbed him off the waiver wire, but we're not sure what his season end ranking would be. What do you think? I mean, I don't think Isaiah Hartenstein knows what his season is going to look like. So for us to sit here and say it's going to look this way or that way would be, sort of an exercise in guesswork. But here's what I will say. We heard Tom Thibodeau in this offseason give praise to Mitchell Robinson. We heard him talk about the expanded game, how he seemed to be working a little bit better on his body, that sort of thing. Now, is it coincidence that Mitchell Robinson also is on a fat contract now? Is he trying to hype him up? I'll let you be the judge of that, okay? But through 2 games so far, Hartenstein's lines look dramatically different because his playing time looks dramatically different. He played 40 minutes in one game, and he played 21 in the other, All right, so we're talking about half the time. But still, in that 21-minute game, 6 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, a block. I mean, this is a hit, a 3. This is not a player we would just let sit on the waiver wire and rot if he does this consistently. In the first game, dude was electric. 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, a block. No threes, but 7-11 from the field. So that's good for 63.6% or 64%. I don't know what Isaiah Hartenstein will be, but if you need help in the big man category, I'm willing to go grab him in a 12-team format and letting to see how it plays out. What do you think?
Let's put it this way. He's going to finish better in fantasy than Mitchell Robinson will. All right? That's
wow.
Despite Robinson starting and being an elite shot blocker and all, I think Hartenstein's game is so well-rounded, so fantasy-friendly, that even if he does play, let's say 20 minutes in one game, 30 plus in another, overall, over the course of, let's say, a 1 week matchup, he's going to give you such a good, diverse, stat set that he'll chip in across the board, hurt you nowhere. I love him. I'd hold on to him.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I think his minutes are going to be inconsistent, period. Not because he's not a valuable player on this team, but because it's going to large in part depend on Mitchell Robinson's foul trouble, his health, and a lot of other factors. Robinson has dealt with health issues while he's been in the league. He's dealt with foul trouble at times too. So there could be nights where it flip-flops like this fairly consistently. Okay. So I look at this guy and I say, look, through 2 games, and really, look, it's hard to take anything from 2 games because the first 2 games of the season. But through 2 games, this guy was averaging 11 points. He's averaging 9.5 rebounds. He's averaging a steal, a block, and half a 3. So if he can give me 1, a 3, a steal, and a block, and then chip in with a handful of rebounds, 7 to 10 points or more, I mean, that's a guy who's an end of bench contributor in almost any format. I mean, really, like that's we like that. All right. Rand comes back and he said that Sabonis has 14, 6, and 3 at the half. So maybe there is hope for him. Look, there's always hope. Like Domantas Sabonis is not some schmuck of a player, right? I know he's been traded a lot in his career early, but I mean he's getting traded for good people. I mean this his dad was pretty good too, by the way. So this is not some guy who's some throwaway player. This is a guy who I think Eric and I are together on this. We think that he was probably slightly overdrafted, but he can still be a very valuable fantasy contributor on your team, especially in the right construct, right? Go back to the Kawhi thing for 1 second. Ro Claren added, I'm interested in this comparison. He said, what about Brandon Ingram for Kawhi? That's a good one. I like that. Well, would you do that?
In Roto, yeah, probably. I think that's a fair deal. I think that, Ingram is doing well. I mean, he left tonight's game, by the way, with concussion-like symptoms, and they had to start Trey Murphy instead, who is a must-add, by the way.
If he wasn't drafted in your league, you should be in a different league.
Go grab Trevor.
Okay?
Anyway,
but 2, yes, if he's available, don't walk, run.
Don't run. Click. All right, going back, I think I liked what I've been seeing from the big 3 of the Pelicans. They're working well together. McCollum, Zion, Ingram. That's an interesting big 3. But that aside, and they're coexisting quite well. We've had a game where each of them scored 20 points apiece and still delivered on the categories you're expecting from each of them. So yes, I think Ingram's going to have a bounce back year, and worries about Zion coming in, soaking up usage, et cetera, soaking up, ball touches, et cetera. That's been overblown. If anything, Ingram's assists are going to go up because he's going to have a guy who's going to shoot at 60+% from the field, making sure it goes in if he passes to Zion.
100%.
I think that's a fair deal. But what Kawhi is going to give you that Ingram doesn't are those steals. Kawhi is a great defender. I mean, he is, when healthy, arguably still the best two-way player in the world, right? And ACL issue aside, Kawhi is not only skilled athletically or blessed physically with those giant hands, but he's a smart player. He knows his stuff. I mean, he grew up in Greg Popovich's, house, San Antonio Spurs. Defense, if he's not, living, breathing, eating defense every day during his time in the Spurs, I don't think he would have won that championship with the Raptors. He is a great and talented player, and I think that what he offers on the defensive side of the ball is not something that Ingram brings to the table. But the points, the assists, Kawhi does that too, right? The field goal, Kawhi does that too.
He's done that once or twice in his life.
Yeah, right. So it's the steals that are going to be the difference maker, and I feel that that's in the end, per game numbers, Kawhi's going to be the better guy. Now, will Ingram end up playing more games? It's possible, but then Ingram, if you look at him, he's also been in, even from his time in the Lakers, been an injury-prone guy. He'll miss time here and there for this and that. So
I was just gonna say he doesn't come without his own risks too.
Exactly, he has his own baggage. So while the upside is looking rosy for Ingram, I think that's a fair deal. That I'd offer Ingram for Kawhi if I could shoot that deal in your league. Go for it.
All right, we like it. You heard what Erik said. All right, this is a guy I want to get to before I want to play my next game. Nick Claxton. Guy's been balling out the first 2 games in Brooklyn. Do you think it's sustainable? Let me just tell you, I think a lot of us here at Ethos have been waiting for this for more than just the last couple of games. This is a guy who last year, a lot of people said, ooh, I like this situation. And then what did Brooklyn do? They brought in LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin and Paul Millsap and all these guys who are no longer on the team. And look, guess what? It's still Nico Claxton who's still standing there. Jared Allen obviously has left for Cleveland long time ago at this point. This is a guy who on that same team. So I mentioned that I drafted that team where I had first pick, and I took Jokic. Okay, but this is also a very unique league where we don't start 1 center, we start 2 centers. So center is an extra premium in this league. So I loved Jokic with the first pick, and then I went weirdly big, including Claxton. Okay, through 2 games, Nico Claxton is averaging 16 points. 10.5 rebounds, and 3 blocks on almost 80% from the field. Do I think that 80% from the field is sustainable? Probably not, right? I mean, that's literally making 4 out of every 5 shots. And I don't care if you're getting bunnies at the rim every time. It's the NBA. Stuff happens, okay? Do I think the rest of the numbers are sustainable? I don't think the scoring will be at 16 points per game. I think you can expect that to come down. But do I think he can average 13 and 10 with a block or 2 a game with a very strong field goal percentage? Why not, Erik? And that's a very valuable center in the fantasy landscape.
All right. Since we're talking about, trades and value, player values, here's a trade that went down I think, early into the season. Maybe just 1 game went by. One guy sent Tobias Harris and Evan Fournier for Nick Claxton and Derek White. So we know Tobias Harris is, a solid pillar of mid-round value in fantasy. And I guess he was the selling point on that other guy's end. But in the end, if you look at it, he traded there. That's an example of buying low on a guy who's not really playing poorly. That's a great example. Yep. Nick Claxton was playing solid, and a guy gave up Tobias Harris. Yeah. But when you combine the value of Nick Claxton and Derek White, who has been playing well without Robert Williams on that, Celtics starting roster, I think the guy who gave up Harris is coming out the winner here.
I mean, yeah, I would say so. I mean, look, in the same league that I keep talking about where I have Claxton, I took Nico Claxton in the 11th round. Okay. Tobias Harris in this league, this league was drafted when this league was drafted. Tobias Harris went in the 7th round. So just based on draft value alone, you're winning. I mean, I took Claxton ahead of guys like Mo Bamba, Harrison Barnes, Beef Stew in Detroit, Isaiah Stewart, Robert Williams, who's going to be out for probably until 2023 at least, Brooke Lopez, who is having an incredible start, but that's again, I feel like that's going to fall off a little bit. But where I took Nico Claxton, I was really surprised to find a player with that much guarantee and with that much upside still at that point in the draft. Because usually at that point, you're looking for upside or you're looking for, a lot of floor but no ceiling, right? Or you're looking for all ceiling and no floor. Claxton this year, because of the roster construct, because of his experience in Brooklyn, and because of the player he is now, he's got a floor and he's still got room to grow in his ceiling, Eric. I like Claxton a lot. I think he's going to be on a lot of successful teams this year. And if he can get closer to 2 blocks a game instead of 1, oh man, you would really be talking about something special there.
Remember that season when Mitchell Robinson started to flirt with top 30 value because he was shooting at 68 from the field, grabbing 10 boards and almost 2 point something blocks per game. That might be Nick Claxton this year.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, right. So maybe not top 35. Let's temper our expectations, but top 50 is not out of the question. If you're talking about a guy, all right, let's just break down.
How about this? I will guarantee right here, first show of the year, the first NBA waiver wire show of the year, the end of week 1 with Eric and Ethan. You are hearing me say Nick Claxton, as long as his health stays good, right? Because we can't predict injury. So as long as the health stays good, top 60 player this year.
I think that's fair. That's definitely fair. I was ready to throw down top 50, but yeah, because and here's how to look at it, guys. If you want to assess why Robert Williams, was valuing, clocking in at value somewhere in the top 25, he's not a great scorer. He's not even a great rebounder, but it's the field goal impact. Even though he doesn't shoot at a high volume, if he's, making something like 6 of 7 shots in a game, for example, that's already a difference maker if you're seeing that 3 games a week, right? Nick Claxton can be that guy and rebound more. Maybe not block at the level that Time Lord blocks because he's, really got that timing thing, down to a science. But I think Claxton still, got the edge over Robert Williams in the health of knees department, right? So,
and when you're that big and that strong, that's just sort of an important part of it.
Exactly. So, I think that Claxton is somebody who will be surprising a lot of people, and a lot of people will be regretting that they slept on him, maybe myself included. But that's because I went small ball and was punting blocks across almost the majority of my team. So he was not on my radar. But on a pure value perspective, I think that, people who have invested in Claxton are going to come out generally winners in fantasy.
I think you're right as well. All right, let's sneak in. We got time to sneak in one more question before we do some quick hitters.
All right,
one last one. So we're all talking about bigs. Yes, we are. I guess that's the theme of the show. Even though Eric started by saying he went small all year. Sorry, Eric. We'll focus on the small guys next week, I guess. All right. As hey man, I stand a whopping 5'8" tall, so I'm all focusing on the guys under 6 feet. Okay. So since we're talking about bigs, what about good old Al Horford in a rotisserie league? Is he still top 75 or is he more on the 100 range? Eric, you want to take a stab at this one first?
In Roto, yes, I think he will still be top 75. It's going to flutter. And as you can see, because the Celtics are really desperate to preserve Al for the playoffs. Okay, I think it's a foregone conclusion that the defending bridesmaids, because that's what they are, the defending bridesmaids are going to make the playoffs again. The Celtics are just that good. Al Horford is such a big piece of their success as they went through the playoffs. They just have to preserve him because he's like 150 years old, and they need him then and less now. All right. Even Noah, they're so good. Even Noah Vonleh can just be shoved in there, and they're gonna somehow win a game. So that said, Al Horford's gonna miss a few games, and because of that, every time you miss a game here and there, you're gonna have to get back in a certain flow. And sometimes in your first game back after missing a game, assuming you didn't really need the rest, you're gonna have some rust. So Big Al is not necessarily gonna have to give you top 75 value. I'd say he'll be in the range closer to 100, but there will
Mhm.
be games where he will pop. Last season, the reason why his value was closer to top 75 was because he exceeded expectations in the blocks department. Will he block a lot of shots? There's no guarantee that he will, because it was a bit of an outlier, because it was his best block rate of his entire career that Al Horford produced last season. So I'm not
Mhm.
holding my breath that that's going to be something sustainable. But
Yeah.
Al Horford is not on your team because he's great at any one thing, but because he does literally everything, in small amounts. He is at the big man level, one of the better low scoring glue guys, I would call him. He does threes, he does steals, he passes the rock, he shoots good from the free throw line, good field goal. He doesn't hurt you anywhere. And that's kind of the mold why we like guys like him, guys like Hartenstein. That's the kind of guy. So yeah, maybe closer to 100 than 75, but
Yeah.
there is gonna be a wider range of volatility in Al Horford's game this season than last. That's for sure. But overall, I think he'll end on a pretty positive value, um,
All right.
when all things
So
are said and done.
all right. So here's my take on Al Horford. I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I'd feel good about Al Horford if he were like the last round pick on my team. I agree with you that he's not going to hurt you, right? But I don't know how much he's going to help you at this point in his career. It pains me to say this as somebody who's 33, turning 34 years old. Big Al is 36, and in the NBA world, that's on the wrong side of 35. And he's got a lot of miles on those tires. And yeah, he had some time off when he played for OKC because they thought he couldn't offer anything, apparently. Joke's on them. Okay. I think Al Horford does more for the Celtics off the court than he does on it, especially given all of the sort of turbulence that's gone on with their head coaching position this offseason. I think he's a great stabilizer in the locker room. I think he was very missed when he went to Philadelphia briefly and then to OKC before returning to Boston. But you look at the first couple of games, and not the two games are meaningful of, the rest of the season. You look at the first two games, no Robert Williams. The Celtics, they have Noah Vonleh. They have Blake Griffin. They have, I think Luke Cornett is still banging around in Boston, but they don't have a lot of big man depth. So Horford's being pushed to the forefront early and often. So far, 7.5 points, 5 rebounds, 0 steals, 0 blocks. I am concerned if I am relying on Al Horford to help my team, right? If you're not relying on him, then you're fine. Just see what it goes. But if you drafted Al Horford in like the 7th or 8th round to be your, prominent player down low for you, I think you got to think about some roster balance going forward, because I see a scenario where he's closer to top 100, may even finish on the outside of the top 100, depending upon the format, health, what could happen this season, a lot of things. So I don't see a lot of upside with Horford. I think you know what you're getting. Kind of reminds me at this stage of his career, not because their games are the same, but in terms of what they bring to the team, reminds me of PJ Brown, good old lunchbox, right? Just steady veteran presence, shows up every night, plays hard, plays the right way, no matter what, calming with the locker room, that kind of thing. I don't think there's a ton of fantasy value to be found with Horford. Eric, we're almost, can't believe it's 6:59 my time. What time is it for you? Does that mean, was it like 7 in the morning?
It's like 10 a.m. here in the Philippines.
10 a.m. So Eric can see into the future. He's already into next week for those of you who are US bound like I am. All right. Eric's already into next week. Eric, since you're already into next week, you could be the prognosticator for us. I'll ask it like this. Is there one player, and it can be, preferably somebody who, more of it in the waiver wire category, but is there one player who you either regret not picking late in your draft as potential league winner or waiver wire gem, or conversely, is there one guy who, maybe had that first big game and you thought, let me see him do it again, but now he's gone off the waiver wire and you're like, I really regret not picking him up. So either one guy who you scooped at the end of the draft, you're like, yes, really stoked about, or one guy who you should have picked up, but you said, nah, I'm going to wait. And then he got scooped up and now you're SOL.
Well, yeah, we've already touched on him. I mentioned him, and that's Trey Murphy. He's that end of draft guy. That I have two Trey Murphy shares. One of them I drafted, the other I picked up when things started happening, and he was showing signs that his strong preseason was carrying over. I wish I have more shares of Trey Murphy. He is going to be that efficient 3 and D guy for the for the Pelicans, and he's gonna fit in just perfectly for their needs. That he's guaranteed time, and he's not gonna need a lot of minutes to produce at a great value. Think of what Cam Johnson is supposed to be bringing to the Suns is what I'm expecting from Trey Murphy, a knockdown shooter who can be active on the defensive side of the ball.
I love that. I love that answer. And for me, Benedict Mathurin. Where was I on this guy? I wanted him on a team. It just didn't work out. And this dude is just balling for the Pacers. And the Pacers, I don't even think they know what they have on their team right now. So they're going to try to figure it out any way they can. And this dude looks like a keeper. I mean, you see his interview the other night. He said, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you about all the guys who are drafted ahead of me, but I know them all. I know them all right here. And I keep that in mind every night I'm on the court. And I love guys like that. Humble, hungry, got something to play for both internally and externally. Obviously wants a check, right? So I love this dude. I think he's going to be a player all year long. Do I think he's going to score close to 30 a night? Probably not over the course of 82 games, but so far, so good. I really like him. Erik, our first show is done. It's 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 10:02 where you are a.m.
Bittersweet, buddy.
Right? But it was beautiful as always. For those of you who joined us, we really appreciate it. We'll get started on time moving forward. First week, you got to give us some forgiveness there as we get transitioned back to video. Send us your questions. Send them in during the week. Put them on the forum. Wherever you got to put them somewhere put them somewhere for someone, Dan, that's you, to see them so we can answer them on the show, okay? And tell your friends about us because we'll be here all season long, all right? Until next week, Erik, we out.
Adios.
All right, we are